Hello there. Inflation will be used to siphon your wages off to pay climate change reparations. The great global wealth redistribution commences. Now, if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe and then like and comment below. Anyone who aspires to anything will have looked on aghast at the way jovial Jeremy has implemented Tax Raider Rish's stealth tax programme. An incentive-less tax programme that will do more to foster inactivity and a fall in productivity than any other budget I can remember. So you do have to wonder what political ideology Rishi and Jeremy are following, don't you? Business will be hit and they will scale back. Less spending will happen, so probably less money will be collected in tax in the end. And more people on the dole, that's all I can see coming down the track. Not only that, it will have other consequences. For example, many people might put off starting a family in the UK due to their financial situation. Something that will further decline our already well below replacement fertility rate. And that will just lead over the coming decades to even more inward migration as the government tries to boost GDP further by maintaining a high population growth. Maybe the PM Rishi Sunak had that in mind when he agreed at the G20 to let more Indian students into the UK system. Now, Sunak also got the ball rolling at the G20 on talks surrounding climate change reparations. And that will tell you a lot about his thought processes where climate change is concerned, whereby developed nations would agree that climate change is all their fault and therefore be legally obliged to pump billions of pounds in reparations into the countries that experience adverse weather events, whatever the cause of those events might be. But as Ed Miliband told BBC's Laura Kuenssberg, our politicians and the people are allergic to the word reparations. So what they're doing is wrapping the concept up in a new term: loss and damage. But that loss and damage still carries culpability with it, an admission of guilt. And that's the reason why the US will only engage with something like this if it comes under the umbrella of general foreign aid, something that carries no admission of any national guilt with it. But maybe the US too will be forced to succumb to accepting liability for loss and damage in the future. Now, you may have missed it, but the European Union Commission Vice President Frans Timmermans told the COP27 earlier today that he would get the EU to set up a loss and damage fund. He is therefore accepting that the EU has some major responsibility for these weather events and that EU citizens will therefore have some of their money transferred to less developed countries. And no one will ever convince me that the UK will not be following suit, even if the US and China don't. And once this blame game starts, there will be no let up to it and no end. And payments to these nations will no longer be about charity or foreign aid. It will effectively be a bottomless pit of debt that we owe them and have to continually fork out for by law. And it won't just be money. Oh no. It will also include looking after those people displaced by such weather events. In future, all someone like a UN official will have to do is declare a portion of the earth as uninhabitable to humans, and anyone there will have the automatic right to be flown out to a developed country and be looked after. The climate asylum seeker. Either that or huge sums of money will have to be transferred to rectify the problem somehow. And remember, many of the international treaties and accords have already been agreed to that could serve as the model to get this started. The Global Compact of Migration is an example of this. But don't expect a referendum on this anytime soon. All you'll see is the largest drop in the standard of living ever seen in the UK, as any wages, wealth or savings you have is eroded away by stealth taxes in the coming years. And the services available to you will also be eroded away as global wealth redistribution ensures your life is levelled down. You will pay for floods and droughts in other countries, but be unable to afford to heat your own home. And on top of the climate fear campaign you're already subjected to, you will soon see the climate guilt campaign starting in earnest. A campaign to guilt you into agreeing to cough up, or feel that you can't object in public to doing so. And it will result in lots of money out and lots of people in, and lots of dodgy accounting in between, with the obscenely wealthy hoovering up all the dosh. You will own nothing, and they will be deliriously happy about it. But at least people in the UK have made their feelings of discontent known in the Daily Telegraph comment sections. And so over to Richard, who will give you his take on that Tory reaction to yesterday's budget.
Thank you, Jeff, and good evening. Somewhere in Middle England, Thomas Ferguson Spencer, the last remaining Tory voter, was seen polishing his bust of Margaret Thatcher whilst preparing himself to jump off the cliffs of Dover whilst shouting out, "God save the King!" Ah! For poor Thomas, reality of what Jeremy Hunt had done to the country began to set in about half a second before he made contact with the rocky outcrop below, and the full realisation hit him roughly when his ankle and his spleen introduced themselves to one another. We live in a country controlled by outside interests, and the people are fine with it. If they weren't fine, they wouldn't comply or pay their taxes, but they do. So the only conclusion one can come to is the people are more than happy paying more tax and relish the prospect of poverty. Now, that's not to say the masses won't have a little gripe and a groan, but in general they are good little boys and girls, and are not angry enough to do something that would actually change the situation. Yes, the great unwashed will happily watch their communities destroyed by influxes of nurses and doctors crossing the channel with their 6'2" grey-haired bearded children. It's called being progressive, don't you know? And it's very sad that Suella Braverman's cited invasion hasn't been welcomed more by the liberal left. One would have thought they would have given their homes and very identities to these people, then joined the late Thomas Ferguson Spencer in his Gravity and Gravel soiree. So, let's be open and honest. The people endorse Jeremy Hunt's budget and fully back it, otherwise the reaction by the masses would have been far less civil, and we wouldn't want any of that now, would we? Or have we become so dumbed down that we will comply with anything? So do what you want to us, Mr. Hunt and Mr. Sunak. We won't raise a finger in objection. Back over to you, Jeff.
Thank you for that, Richard. And finally, when subscribing, please don't forget to press that little bell and always select the all option, or you won't get any notifications when I publish a new video. And thank you all so much for taking the time to watch the show.